Well, thank you so much for tuning in. This interview that I did with Nick, who happens to be my lovely boyfriend, this interview was a really, really good insight about transitions. Whether it's a full time job, going to full time grad school, kind of like Nick's story was, I think we all go through really, really difficult transitions at times. Like, I went through the grad school process from going in my master's in counseling to being a full time counselor. And actually, the transition from going from undergrad to grad school was a big transition as well. I really enjoyed this conversation. I was extremely nervous at first, so you won't hear me talk as much as you will in the end. But I hope you enjoy it because I know I did. And it's fun to see him and to experience me in a podcast setting versus just like real life, too. I think it's a whole new journey for the both of us. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy. I'm Mindi, and I have a microphone. So this must be Mindi and the mic from Stigma to Connection. Let's have a conversation. Well, welcome to Mindi and the mic from Stigma to Connection. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired and it's been a long day, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah. So tell me about yourself. I obviously know a lot about you since we've been dating the past 9 months, but I think other people would like to know your story and what you like to do.
Yeah, so it's an honor to be your first guest. And my name is Nick Olschlager. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota originally. I went to Iowa State University for undergrad college. I received a mathematics degree, and then I went into teaching for 2 years, taught middle school math for 2 years, and then I decided to do a career change, which wasn't totally my plan, but once I got into teaching, I was like, oh, I think I could definitely use a change here, and I went back to grad school, and I'm in the third semester of a 2-year program, studying data science here at the University of Nebraska in Omaha, and I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, like you said, I've had the opportunity to date and get to know you for 9 months, and so I guess for everybody keeping track, that's 3 years in Omaha. That I lived up till then. Everything was in Minnesota and college. So
Yeah, wow. So what made you jump from teaching to going back to school full time?
yeah, so teaching can be emotionally exhausting, and it definitely was for me, to the point where there were days that I would go home and fall asleep on the couch before I could decide what I wanted to do. And that was really difficult. And as I looked forward to other parts of my life, I was like, I don't know if I can handle a job that takes that much of my like emotional and relational energy and then go home and just wipe out. So yeah, I enjoyed parts of it. I tell a lot of people it had the ingredients I wanted in a job. It just had them in the wrong proportions. And so it had a lot of dealing with people problems. There was always a person who had a problem. And sometimes that's really an adventure. And I know a lot of my teacher friends talk about that's what keeps their lives interesting. And I can get that. But me, I wanted those in a little bit of different pieces and sizes.
Yeah. Do you find the transition from going from a full-time job to being in grad school or going back to school hard?
Yeah, so I think in terms of doing the work, not totally. There's like I always enjoyed school, and so going back to being a student was kind of like my comfort zone, especially going into teaching, which was not my comfort zone. I thought it would just be like as academic as I remember being a student was, and it was a lot more like supervisory and like people management. So going back to being a student, I was like, oh, like my thing. But some of the parts that I didn't necessarily account for or expect is it was hard to kind of feel like I was taking a step back in my life. Like having graduated undergrad and then going full time, like it was hard to go back to kind of being that college student and not having full-time work and not having some of that consistency of like a stable job or kind of set hours, where grad school, even more than undergrad, a lot of it's kind of on your own time and even by your own motivation. Yeah. And not a lot of people, like, there are a lot of people there to help you, but they're kind of there to help you do what you want to do more than, and guide you through that more than what I think like teaching, where it was pretty clear what my responsibilities were and when I needed to do them. And so I think leaving some of that structure of steady or standard job to go back to school and realize, especially at the master's level, a lot of it's on me to decide how this is going to go and how I put my time into it.
Yeah, I feel like because I went through grad school myself for my master's degree, and I worked like part-time jobs, like coffee shop, barista, receptionist job. And I feel like every time though I went back to grad school and did it, I just felt like it wasn't like a step back for me per se, but it did not seem like a step forward at the same time. But yeah, at the same time, I was going like towards something too.
Yeah.
So it was like this weird in between transition phase, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And keeping in mind that, like you said, you're going towards something. It's this like additional school or some of these like short-term programs aren't like landing places. They're really, for me, it's kind of a launch pad or like a hallway that I need to walk through to get to a place that I'm more interested in being than I was as a teacher. And I guess to talk a little bit about why I picked data science, I said I wanted some of those pieces of like what I found in teaching in different sizes. Data science still communicates a lot of information. There's so much information in the world, and I really enjoyed, part of the reason I wanted to go into teaching is I enjoyed almost all the subjects growing up in school, and I wanted a job that used all of them. And what I found in data science that teaching also had was it uses a lot of different skills. There's a lot of mathematical skills and understanding the numbers and everything inside of the work I'm doing, which I won't get into details, but there's also a lot of like human skills and how do I communicate that and how do I interpret it, writing skills, design skills, and how do I create visuals that are aesthetically pleasing and direct people's perceptions to the right thing. And so I guess I'm geeking out a little bit about the stuff I'm going into, but it's been like a launch pad and accelerator that I've had to like remind myself that it's not the destination, because it's been, I mean, there's the like inconsistency of like not working full time or not, school comes before my job. And so I'm not making like what I could be making in terms of money. And so like financial security has been something that's stressed me out at times, but just remembering that it is for a season and it's really accelerating me towards something that I could really see myself settling into and enjoying in terms of my work, but also serving a lot of people with the gifts and strengths that I have. It has been really, I think, especially in the second half of my program now, like year 2, that's been a good motivation now that I've gotten like through year 1, is like, oh, now I feel like I'm closer to where I want to be. And I don't think I would have been there if I hadn't gone through this program, because it's exposed me to so much. I've learned so much. I've learned parts of the career or field or discipline that I don't want to do. And like, yeah, ways I don't want to like complete tasks. And I've learned from so many people, and like what I know now compared to a year ago is insanely different. And I remember like semester 1, it was pretty simple. I hope, I know you have a lot of questions for me, but I hope this is valuable. Semester 1, like I had a soft intro where a lot of my classes worked together, and a lot of the software tools or computer tools I used were kind of the same thing. And then semester 2, I got swamped. I was asked to do like 4 different projects using 4 different software tools, one of which I had used before. And the one that I had used before wasn't the best one at doing what I was trying to do with it. And it was so stressful because I was like, I had no idea how long things were going to take because it was pretty much all my first time doing things. So, you have to budget like 10 times as much time as it should take you to do whatever you're trying to do. And that was hard, but I remind myself like, that's why I'm doing it in school and not the workplace, because school lets me make those mistakes without cost to like a company. Like it's kind of a free place to learn. And I also get to learn like, because there's not the like stakes of a job attached to these skills that I'm learning, I get to choose if that's something I enjoy doing or see the value in personally, and not just like take orders from the man, Little hint for all you teachers out there. First of all, thank you for what you do. I have so much respect for people in teaching, having been in it. What a difficult job, and yet what a rewarding job. And to everybody who puts their heart into, big shout out and thank you. And also the people that are putting their heart out into it and are like getting thrown around in like a laundry machine. Please reach out to people who have been doing it a long time and seem to have stability in their life, because it's a profession that can like grind you down to like the end of yourself. And so yeah.
Do you regret teaching?
No, I learned a lot about kind of the style of work that I enjoy doing. And I keep using this word enjoy, like that's such a privilege to get to choose what I get to work on. But like kids need to be taught, and they need quality teachers and they need quality schools. And so, I really struggled in the format for the 2 years I was a part of it. But I do feel like I contributed to some positive experiences for my students in their education and in their like development. And like people need to be doing it. And so I'm glad that I was a part of that for the 2 years that I did it. And it also gives me a perspective that, like I was saying, like teachers are so valuable. And I don't want to take that for granted. And I want to make sure wherever I go that like, I'm going to have the like fortune of working with like people's information, their like sensitive information, and telling them like stuff they're interested in knowing about it. That's like fun and like a privilege. But we need some of those like essential workers, like teachers, and doing that for 2 years, I think gave me a perspective to, not take those things for granted.
Yeah. Props to you. I don't think I could ever be a teacher, but I did want to be a high school teacher when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I got sick and tired of writing papers. So that is why I didn't want to be a high school teacher.
Yeah. And I liked it because I remember looking back at some of my teachers, and I think they really enjoyed teaching and they enjoyed interacting with the students and interacting with each other. And I think that's true in the sense of teaching can be one of the most humanizing workplaces that you're a part of, because there's so many people working towards the same thing. You're in this huge collection of like other teachers working to educate students. Some of the student interactions you have are really precious and rewarding, and it has its challenges. I'm not neglecting that, but I did enjoy some of the like camaraderie of being in that workplace and just getting to help make that system go well. I also wanted to say teaching had like, it pushed me to develop skills that I don't think I would have developed if I didn't teach for 2 years.
Like what skills?
Like presenting every day whether or not I was really like ready and confident to present. And then I'd have to repeat that presentation 3 times each day. And like preparing and getting to a point of like, okay, am I prepared for what I need to do, or am I trying to over prepare, or adapting to the unknowns? Also just like recognizing human needs. Like I had this interaction with a student where he told me that he fell off his bike in the middle of class, and he asked me to go to the nurse. And I was like, you fell off your bike? You've been sitting in my class for 45 minutes. What do you mean you fell off your bike? What? I was such like at such a loss of like what to do in that situation. And one, I'm kind of glad I was in that situation. Like I learned it's okay to just be in situations where you don't know what to do. But also like I remember being so upset that he would like interrupt class to tell me that he fell off his bike, which he clearly didn't do in class. And I think the student definitely could have handled the situation better. But I did follow up with like our school dean, because I called the dean because I was like, that doesn't make any sense for him to want to see the nurse right now, because he clearly didn't just fall off his bike. And I talked to her afterwards and she's like, well, did you see his knee? And I was like, no. And she's like, yeah, it's like, it might be infected from when he fell off his bike a week ago. And I'm like, okay, that's not what he told me.
You're getting 2 different stories, clearly.
Learning how to like communicate with people that like do really need something from you and do really need to communicate something to you, but aren't doing it effectively. Yeah. But also just the human need of like, oh, like he had an infected knee wound. Like, yeah, I wouldn't let him like go see the nurse for that. But that is not how the situation played out. And just learning to take awareness from some of those situations of how did I respond to it? Because I immediately went to like, this kid's out of line. And I immediately got annoyed and was like, if he asks me one more time, like call him for backup. But there was a human need there, and developing some of that awareness of, okay, maybe there are going to be situations where I'm like, oh, this is not how I want somebody to come ask me for something, but they may still need something. And how do I respond in a way of like, okay, maybe you're not communicating appropriately, but I still want to meet your need.
Yeah. So for anyone out there who's experiencing, maybe they want a career change or going back to school, what would you say to them as someone who did it himself?
Yeah, I feel like, especially for young people who are just out of college and are getting into their first career job or profession that's like full time, and you've spent time preparing for it and studying for it for maybe like years. Because I spent like 3-4 years of my life preparing to become a teacher, and then really quickly felt like this was not an environment I could thrive in long term. I began looking for and praying for an opportunity that would be a step forward and not just a step sideways. Teaching, I was struggling, but it wasn't a bad profession. And I hope some of that's come out in how I've talked about it. And so as I was thinking about, oh, I might want to change here, I was really looking for a step forward from that. And not like a step backwards. I didn't want to waste all of the time I had put into it to just switch. And I also felt like there were probably things like the things I just mentioned about what I kind of took away from it, that I could learn from the situation I was in while I was looking for that next opportunity. And I think that's true of any profession. Like everything has its pros and cons. And enjoying and digging into the benefit and the service of the work you're doing at the time you're doing it, especially when you start to feel that like, oh, maybe I want to do something different, especially if there's like a good opportunity for it. I just said, okay, I'm not going to like just go on Indeed.com every day and stress myself out about all the opportunities that I'm missing that I could be doing instead of teaching. I made sure I was patient to like look occasionally, kind of consider like big idea what I wanted to do, and to see some of the practicality and have conversations with people in my life that could give me guidance on what some of those opportunities might look like. And then as I was doing that, I was still putting everything I had into teaching. And I think that really gave me some of the benefits of learning from like those situations and really sharpening my presentation skills, which have really benefited me as I've switched to a different discipline. But also enjoying some of the things that you get in the job that you're not going to get in other jobs, like opportunities for me to coach, which were just super special. And I enjoyed them, whether my team, I had 2 undefeated soccer teams and I had a winless basketball team. So like 2 teams for soccer that didn't lose a game and 1 team for basketball that didn't win a game. And a JV volleyball team that didn't win a game. So I'm back. And yet all of those experiences were fun and things that I had really great access to participate in by being a teacher because I was already at the school. I already knew the kids. It just made sense for me to do it. Where now that I'm in school, I can't imagine trying to find the time in my schedule to do something like that. I'm glad teaching was short term, but I'm glad I took the 2 years that I did because there were things that I really enjoyed. And although I don't care to be a 30-year soccer coach, being a soccer coach for 2 years was really a blast. What's the other part of that question?
I just asked, what would you tell people who are considering to go to a different career or going back to grad school?
Yeah. I think I was going to say something about, in some of those conversations I had with people in my life who helped give me an idea of what opportunities I might be looking for. That's for me what shaped my next step the most. And I had relatives who had also done similar grad school steps, and I got to learn from how they did theirs, and it was super helpful. My brother's wife recently completed her master's program, and I remember when she was looking for her master's program, she considered the top programs and what she wanted to study, and she settled on one that was really local and helped her, it fit her life without totally changing her life to go to school. And I remember looking at some of these master's programs, and some of them would have required me to move. And I moved to Omaha to take the job, but I also found a life here.
You love it here.
That I do like Omaha. My brother thinks I don't, and so he moved to Portland, but I do like it here.
Did you say where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from Minnesota. Yeah.
Minnesota.
Yeah, and now Omaha. But yeah, I also considered, I think this is really important if you're considering a job change and going back to school, what's the rest of your life look like, and how important are some of those things? Because life is more than the job you're doing, and especially being a young person, I had to kind of find that perspective outside of school and outside of college, because a lot of what that's preparing me for was work. Making sure that I had a perspective that said, okay, how's my access to my family? How are my relationships around me? What am I a part of that's not related to the work I'm doing? And how would a professional change affect those things? That really gave me a lot of clarity, because when I was thinking about moving, I was like, the change that I want in my life doesn't feel like I want to uproot everything and start over. It just feels like I want a professional change. And so that gave me a lot of guidance in where I was looking for that professional change. And it took me from 10 minutes to get to the school I was teaching at to now like 10 minutes to go to the school I'm learning at.
Yeah.
And because it's close and in state, like there were a lot of like financial benefits to that. And I didn't have to go through a moving process, and I got to keep a lot of the life I was living outside of that intact. And like my second place school would have required a complete move. And so I'm really glad that it worked out in the way it did, that I could keep those relationships and keep those things going. But I know that's like some people do kind of want that start over, and yeah, there's nothing against that.
How are your family and friends?
How are my family and friends? My family is good. My family is slowly spreading out across the country. Having grown up, I have 3 brothers and 2 parents.
Right. Compared to, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like my parents are still married.
Yeah.
And so we had like a really close family growing up, because I think my parents were like, I can't imagine bringing anybody into this house with like 4 crazy boys. And so we just kind of like, we're just super close with each other. And then they'd like sign us up for a bunch of activities to make sure that we got our energy out every day. But we were like a close family, because like my mom would like go to church or like go to schools, and people would be like, you have 4 boys. And I think she was just like people don't understand the reality I live
Your mom
in.
can keep up. Like, she's very active and very athletic. And she's really good at pickleball.
Yeah. No, she definitely kept up, and like she'll take walks like every morning before she starts her day. And yeah, no, there's a lot that I admire and appreciate about her, but like she definitely like gave a lot of herself to make sure that we had a close family, and enjoyed that. And then so to go into college and to then kind of slowly spread out, my brother went to school in Indiana, and then his first professional position was in St. Louis, Missouri, and now he's in Detroit, Michigan. And then I went to Ames.
They're all over.
Well, that's just my older brother, right? And so he starts bouncing around, and then I go to Ames, Iowa, which is where
Go Cyclones.
Yeah, go Cyclones, where my dad went to school, and where I got this nice John Deere hat. No sponsorship. And so I started bouncing, and I was like, okay, I don't want to take a huge step. I had an opportunity to go to school like 12 hours away. I was like, that just feels too far, because I still wanted to connect with people from high school, but I did want like a little bit of a change. And so I took a little step. And then as I came out of college, I took another little step. And then my younger brother, who's more adventurous than I did, also went to Iowa State. And as he came out, he was like, Nick doesn't make Omaha sound exciting. And so he talked to the company he was working for, and they were like, where do you want to go? And he said, where's the farthest away I can go? Because he wanted an adventure. And so he's ended up in Portland, Oregon. And I'm like, oh man, like our family just went from like Midwest to like cross country in like 5 years. And then my youngest brother was at home, and he's like he's not very vocal about like missing us, but like the closeness of how we related to each other growing up was just not the same now that we're in different parts of the country. And that's just been an adjustment. I know one of the first years I was in Omaha, and I think it was the first year my brother moved to Michigan, was really difficult, because it was the transition from, okay, this is somebody I'm used to seeing. Like there was a little bit of a fade out from, I was used to seeing him every day, to, okay, when he went to college, I was used to seeing him like 3 times during his school year, but most of the summer. And then when he like moved to Michigan and I'm in college, or when I moved to Omaha, I'm like, this is somebody that I grew up with and I really love and care about. And I might see him, if I'm lucky, 5 times a year. And my family does a great job of spending some extended time, like a couple weeks together, one each summer and one each Christmas season. But that was an adjustment. I was like, that like, he was probably the closest relationship I had in my life at that time. And I was like, and I'm only going to see him 5 times a year. Yeah. And that was a huge adjustment. I remember talking to my college roommate, who like a similar situation, somebody who I was seeing every day and really enjoyed the friendship of. And he lives in Des Moines, Iowa, which is 2 hours away from here in Omaha. And I was telling him, like, hey, I like it here in Omaha. I'm meeting a lot of really cool people, but like these relationships aren't deep yet. Like they have like little roots and they don't understand me like you understand me. And like a lot of the relationships were professional, and the amount of like regular personal relationships wasn't as consistent as it was in college. And I was like, that was a wake up call, because I was like,
Transition's hard.
yeah, like I was meeting like pretty cool people that I enjoyed the friendships I was building with, but I was like calling my roommates and also one of my lifelong best friends who followed me from high school to Iowa State, and we like lived together all 4 years, and I was like, they just don't get me like you do. And it's really hard to kind of be in a situation like that. Was my first time away from the family I grew up in, and then leaving college to come to Omaha, the friends that I had known for so long. Wow, like I feel like I could be a new person, and making sure I didn't lose who I was from what I grew up. And I definitely gained some things. Therapy cat here. I really miss those. And kind of like I was saying, like college and school kind of sets you up for the workplace and your profession. But making sure that I had a perspective that included my life as a whole was really important, because some of those things like affected me way more than I expected. And dealing with some of the like loneliness of being without some of those close relationships was challenging.
Transition's hard, especially going from college. If I'm going from home to college, then college to like maybe home to job, I would say.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that in college.
Yeah.
They really do not talk about that hard transition. My last question before I want to do some hot seat QA.
Okay. Some shorter answers.
My last question is, what would you say to any young person or old person about transition in general? I know we talked about from what was it like to go from like full-time to grad school, but like in general, it seems like you've been talking about transitions.
Yeah, because I've been going through a lot of them. I think I have two things to say about transitions. I think one is they can be really helpful, and don't be afraid of them, because in some regards, I started to feel that like discomfort in teaching of like, oh, I don't see myself being here long term. I don't think this is a good fit to continue going through just this emotional exhaustion throughout my life. Like I could picture myself being like 60 and having like heart problems because of some of the stress I was under, like, and I would have figured some of that out, but it was challenging. And I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for that. But at the same time, there was the part of me that was like, but like, you got to do it. Like, this is what you signed up to do. And just realizing that there's good ways to consider transitions, like, can benefit you and the people you're transitioning away from, and the people you're transitioning to. Which I said I was going to share two things. I think I'm going to share a number of things, and I'm not going to number them anymore because this is going a little off track. Like I said, teaching was a stable job, and it was really challenging. And I was trying to transition away from that challenge and its effects it was having on me, because some of it was like physically difficult for me to like wake up every day or get home and like being exhausted to the point that I was falling asleep. Like I was like pretty sure that I didn't want that to be what my life looked like.
Yeah. That'd be hard.
Yeah. But it was stable, and I had to look at that and say, I can't leave this for like just anything.
Yeah.
Like it's a decent job, and I can't go work at like McDonald's, which
Mickey D's.
I
McDanks.
I'll stand by that. I was like, I can't go take a backward step, and I've spent so much of my life investing in preparing to do this. Like I do want to do it up to the point I find that like next step. And so for anybody considering a transition, like try to get a clear picture of where you are and what you're trying to transition away from, because I think it was really important for me transitioning away from the school that like I wouldn't just like give up on the students. And that's something I'm really grateful that my opportunity to know that I was gonna go to my grad school program came only like 2 months until the end of my second school year. That was when I like officially became like got accepted. I think I was accepted in March, and then I had my first like advising appointments in May, which was my last month of teaching. And so it really worked out that I wasn't like a lame duck, like they talk about the president. Once you know what your next thing is, it's really hard to invest your whole self in what you're doing in the present. And so I would really encourage people to try to get a clear picture of what your current reality is and what you're trying to transition away from. And don't be too quick to transition away from it.
Yeah.
Because there may be things like hopefully I've shared about teaching that there's purpose in where you're at. And then those things can also guide the step you have going forward. I've got more. So,
Hold the phone, everyone. He has more.
Moving, like, and then having that transition move me forward, how I handled that transition mattered because, like, I didn't burn bridges when I decided to leave teaching. And I remember, like, getting into my master's program and realizing like, oh, I need to like make more money. And then I was like, you know what? I didn't burn bridges. Like I can go back and substitute teach whenever I'm available.
Mm-hmm.
And so just keeping some of those considerations, but at the same time, like when you transition, it's gotta be a full transition.
Yeah. You can't just go halfway.
Like I would not have survived the program I'm in if I had tried to do it while I was teaching.
Yeah.
And I had, like, I wouldn't say that's a hard and fast rule, but I had heard it from enough people who were teachers and were getting like teaching related masters that they really struggled in their master's program. And I'm like, I'm trying to change careers and do like a somewhat technically difficult master's degree. And I'm already exhausted and falling asleep when I get home from teaching. Like, I don't think I can do both. And so It was really helpful for me to be able to do that full transition into making like grad school my professional priority.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know your advice that you gave to me when I was switching from just full-time agency to private practice was always take a step forward and not sideways or backwards. And that's helped me a lot in my transitions.
Yeah, and I think that's if possible. Like sometimes you make a transition and you end up in a place where you're like, I need to get out of here immediately. And for me, those are places where like if you're unsafe, if it's like not meeting some of your financial needs and you're exposing yourself to like predatory lending because you're in such a bad like financial situation, like those are things you can step backwards from. Like they're just not where you need to be. And then teaching, I had invested so much into it that I didn't want to just take a step sideways.
Yeah.
I think if I had like less investment in it, then maybe I would have been okay, like just kind of doing something similar, you know?
Yeah.
But, and there were the good parts of it that if I was going to move on from it, I wanted to make sure that it was a better opportunity and a step forward and towards more, and not just, oh, this is really challenging, get me out of here, or, oh, this is really challenging, give me something different, but that isn't better.
Yeah.
I also wanted to throw in here, first place my brain went when you said, what would you say to people going through transitions, was I went to a high school commencement for the high school I graduated from. The year after I graduated, I don't really remember why I ended up there. I think I went...
Ended up your high school graduation a year later.
I don't keep in touch with anybody from that class. to this day. So I was just there.
Shout out to the class of 2022.
This was high school, so 2018.
2018. My bad.
But I remember I like clever people, and this was the teacher who gave the commencement address for the high school. One of the history teachers there had a clever takeaway that he was trying to impress on the students as they graduated and went into their transition, and one of the first major transitions in their life. And he said a lot of people would, when yearbook signing was a thing,
Yeah.
everybody, like, it's less of a thing now, but when yearbook signing was a thing, and you'd like go around and make sure everybody sends you a yearbook, and they all write the like little note, and then you'd have teachers sign your yearbook, and most of them said like, have a great summer. This teacher was like, he was a little clever, and he was like a little like maybe over the top, but he's like, that never satisfied me. Like, I wanted to impress something more to my students. And so he said, anytime I would sign a student's yearbook, I would write down, don't get lost. I think he said like, have a great summer and don't get lost. And that, like, that's a great kind of guardrail for any time you're moving into a transition is,
Have a great summer.
but don't get lost. And that doesn't mean like you can pair that perfectly with the whole not all who wander are lost. You can wander around a little
Okay,
bit.
Pinterest.
You say Pinterest, I say Lord of the Rings. We can disagree, but
Oh yeah.
but like you can wander around a little bit and you can take time to figure things out, but don't get lost. Like, there are definitely places like and people I could have like gone and talked to, or like decisions I could have made once teaching got challenging that would have made me lost. Or even transitioning out of college and coming to Omaha, like, I took time to make sure that this was a place that like had opportunity for me to build friendships and build a life and like live in safety and like some of these things that were just like essentials. And I wasn't just going to come here for the job. And so, yeah, I would say if you're going into a transition, maybe like that's a really simple thing to just kind of tuck in the back of your head of like, okay, I might have some hits and misses. I might, like, if it's a professional transition, do an like interview or like not get selected for the job, or if it's like a personal transition, like maybe you like have relationships kind of come and go or shift and transform, but don't get lost. And yeah, making sure that you know kind of what that means for you and in what your entrance to the transition. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions. But now I'm gonna do some Q&A hot seat.
Okay.
What's the last book you read?
It was about immigration across. No, it was about how. This is one of my major research topics in grad school. It was about how the U.S.-Mexico border came to be. It was the history of how it was drawn and agreed upon between and Mexico. Line in the Sand by Rebecca St. John. It's a quality book. It had no image on the cover, no image inside the cover, and that's when I knew that I was in grad school for real.
What's the color that you wear the least?
Probably pink or yellow.
What's the food you eat the most?
Anything with peanut butter on it. Like, that's my standard breakfast is bread with bagel. Yeah, excuse my personal
Minnesota
preference for how I pronounce the word bagel. I know it's bagel.
Okay. Who's the last person you text? Probably me.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, no. One of my friends from my program, because he's making some chicken. And
then, what's your favorite song right now?
My favorite song right now. Oh, man. You get into grad school and you don't listen to music anymore because you're too busy.
Okay.
I like white noise. I just need something going on.
The brain waves frequency,
Yeah.
126 hertz.
Yeah. I've really been enjoying Colony House over the last couple of years. They're kind of an indie band out of Nashville, and I've enjoyed each of their albums, which each have a bit of a different color to them. So
Sweet. And my final question is, if anyone ends up in Omaha, Nebraska, where would you recommend for them to go?
oh, like if they're visiting.
Yes.
I was like, if you're gonna live here, I would live most places in the city.
No, like a visit. Warren Buffett does live here, so you could live by him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we have some of our like seasonal favorites. Like the College World Series is one of the coolest things that I've seen. The way those student athletes play, they play with more heart than I've seen in a lot of professional games, and so it's pretty cool to see that level of effort and dedication. So College World Series was a big one. A lot of people talked about the zoo. It's a nice zoo, but I was like,
number one in the nation.
It's number 2. San Diego's number 1.
Back check.
I got a cousin in San Diego that reminds me of that. But when I was coming here and like lived here, and people were like, "Oh, did you go to the zoo?" I was like, "Why would I go to a zoo?" But I will say, like, I did go with my college roommates, and it was still enjoyable.
Good.
It's a solid zoo. And then I would just check out like downtown or like Midtown or Memorial Park, UNO's campus.
You went with your college roommates?
To the zoo?
You told me that no grown men go to the zoo together.
Yeah.
And you went with your college.
by
But you went with your college.
that. So I definitely stand by, like, I don't think I've ever seen a single adult man at a zoo. That just is
But you told
unbelievable.
me.
I think maybe we should start like an Instagram thread that captures single men at zoos, and we try to characterize who these people are. But it's also not a place where you're going to see a lot of like groups of adult men go together. And that's what she's commenting on. Like, I also believe that. Like, it's just not that type of place.
But you went with your roommates.
I went with my roommates.
Who were adult
We
men.
were looking for something to do in the afternoon, and we asked.
I just wanted to make that point.
We asked the
on
standard
this
question
podcast.
of, "What do you do in Omaha?" And I'm like, we had already done kind of the stuff I wanted to do, and I'm like, well, a lot of people
Might as
say
well go to the zoo.
and I have not wanted to go by myself, and they were like, yeah, we wouldn't go by ourselves either, and so we went together, and then.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for being on Mindi on the mic with me, and I guess we're gonna cook dinner next.
For everybody that wants to know our personal lives, yeah.
They don't care. But no, I appreciate you being on this podcast and to talk about transitions, being a full-time teacher to now a full-time student.
Like, maybe my parting like word to everybody that listened and is listening to the end is like, there's a lot of grace for transitions. Like,
Amen.
There's
You can breathe.
you can breathe. I have made mistakes, and I hope that some of what I've shared today has been, and in this episode, has been helpful and useful and can give you some direction. But it's not going to perfectly guide you, and there's going to be ways that you're going to be like, oh man, I didn't do that right. But there's grace for that. And so, I hope that encourages people too.
Shout out to Nick's friend, Tim. He helped me a lot figure out some of the audio on this podcast, and I told him I would give him a shout out. Shout out.
Yeah, that's my guy Tim Peterson from high school. He's still up in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I don't know if his last name should be said. I'm so thinking of HIPAA right now, but I don't think he cares.
Well, I mention it because he's developing a audio product.
Oh, yeah. So look him up.
It's not released yet, but he is developing his own like sound hardware and like speaker setup.
Also, shout out to Carter. He also helped me with some of my sound questions because even though I had the dream to do this podcast and I'm pretty good at activating and executing, I don't have a lot of knowledge on the audio. So shout out to Carter and Tim.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.